I never thought I would be here, typing my story out for strangers on the internet, but here I am. My name is Jake, and I'm a 36-year-old guy who thought he had a solid marriage with his wife, Sarah. We had been together for nearly 10 years. It was a typical suburban life. We had a lovely home, decent jobs, and even talked about starting a family. Everything seemed picture perfect. But like with many things in life, appearances can be deceiving. It all started a few months ago when I noticed little changes in Sarah. At first, I chalked them up to stress from work. She has a demanding job as a marketing manager, and I figured she was just tired. But then I began to notice she was more secretive with her phone, often texting late at night. She would giggle to herself, and it wasn't the kind of giggle that made me feel warm inside. It felt distant, like she was sharing something with someone else that I wasn't privy to. The first time it hit me that something was off was during one of our usual date nights. We had gone out to our favorite restaurant. But instead of the usual flow of conversation, Sarah seemed distracted. She kept checking her phone under the table. I asked her who she was texting, and she shot me a look that I can only describe as defensive. Just work stuff, Jake. You know how it is. Of course, I let it slide, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. It was like a slow, insidious poison creeping into my mind. I tried to shake it off because I loved her, and trust was a big part of our relationship. But then the signs escalated. She started to come home late from work, and when I asked her about it, she brushed me off with an excuse about a new project she was working on. Looking back, I wish I hadn't been so naive. It wasn't long before the cracks in the facade began to widen. I noticed her wardrobe changing. She was buying new clothes, and not just any clothes. These were outfits that screamed date night or look at me. I wanted to confront her, but every time I opened my mouth, I felt a mix of fear and disbelief. How could she betray me like that? The turning point came one fateful Friday evening. Sarah had a work event and promised she'd be home late. I was left alone with my thoughts and an ever-growing feeling of dread. My instincts kicked in, and I found myself scrolling through our shared photo albums on my phone. I stumbled upon a picture from our last vacation, and it hit me hard. I remembered how much fun we had, but then I thought about the ongoing changes in her behavior. That's when I made the decision to dig deeper. I didn't want to believe it, but my gut told me something wasn't right. Later that night, I made my way to the living room where I noticed that Sarah had left her laptop open. On impulse, I opened it. I know it was an invasion of privacy, but I felt like I was in a dark tunnel with no light at the end. As I scrolled through her emails, my heart dropped. There it was in plain sight, emails exchanged with our travel agent, a guy named Mark. The emails weren't just about travel plans. They were flirty, filled with inside jokes and plans that did include me. I felt like the world around me was crumbling. I could hardly breathe as I read through the exchanges, each word cutting deeper than the last. The worst email was the one that confirmed it all. I can't wait to see you again. It's always so special when we're together. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My mind raced with thoughts of how untrusting I had become and how wrong I had been to doubt her. A mix of rage and heartbreak surged through me as the weight of betrayal settled in. I knew I had to confront Sarah, but what would I say? I was overwhelmed with emotions, and I still had a part of me that wanted to hope it was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew I had discovered enough to confront her about her infidelity. I spent the rest of the night packing, wrestling with the reality that my life was about to change forever. What followed was going to be a confrontation that would forever alter our relationship. I was ready to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The moment Sarah walked through the door, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread swelling inside me. She seemed cheerful, almost too cheerful, as if she hadn't just been betraying the man she claimed to love. I could feel my heart racing as she entered the living room, her eyes sparkling, unaware of the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. "Hey, babe, sorry I'm late. Work was crazy," she exclaimed, tossing her keys onto the coffee table. The sound of metal clattering against wood echoed in the room, a reminder of the tension that was about to unfold. "Can we talk?" I managed to say, forcing the words out through the knot in my throat. I watched as her expression shifted, the smile faltering just a bit. It was a tiny crack in her facade, but it was enough to give me a glimmer of hope that she might be worried. "Sure, what's up?" she replied, her tone light but laced with an undercurrent of nervousness. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts and courage. I went through your emails. I watched as her eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her face. "You what?" she stammered, her voice rising an octave. "Jake, that's an invasion of my privacy." "Is it really? Because I think what I found in them is a much bigger violation," I shot back, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You've been seeing Mark, our travel agent, flirting with him, planning trips without me. How could you do this?" Her expression shifted from shock to defense in an instant. "Jake, it's not what you think. We're just friends. Friends." I interrupted, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "You don't send emails like that to just a friend. You don't talk about how special it is to be together unless there's something going on." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, struggling to come up with a response. "I never meant for you to find out this way. It's just complicated." Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding my gaze, and I could see the cracks in her composure widening. "Complicated? Is that your excuse?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. "You're in love with him, aren't you? That's why you've been acting so different." "Jake, no, I love you. We have something special. I got carried away. It didn't mean anything." She pleaded, taking a step toward me, but I didn't want to be near her. I felt nauseous, the betrayal hanging heavy in the air between us. "Not mean anything. You're having an emotional affair, Sarah. It's worse than I ever imagined," I snapped, my heart racing with both anger and hurt. She clasped her hands together, desperation etched across her face. "Can we talk about this calmly? Please, just give me a chance to explain." I was feeling so lonely. "You've been so focused on work and I felt neglected. I never intended to hurt you." Her words were laced with manipulation, and I could sense the guilt she was trying to deflect onto me. "You think that's an excuse to cheat on me, to betray my trust?" I challenged, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. "I messed up, okay? I'm sorry. I thought it was just harmless fun at first. I didn't think it would go this far," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I never wanted to lose you." The tears felt insincere, and I could see straight through her act. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. "I can't believe this is happening. I thought we had something real and you threw it away for some guy who sells travel packages." "I swear it didn't mean anything. It was just a fling." She almost shouted, her frustration boiling over, but it was too late for apologies. I felt my heart shattering piece by piece as I processed everything she had said. "A fling? You think that's going to fix this? You've shattered my trust. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." Her expression shifted to one of panic, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but that quickly faded. I had given her everything, my heart, my life. And now here we were, standing in the ruins of what was once our marriage. "What do you want from me, Jake?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a moment, letting the reality of the situation sink in. I had a choice to make, and in those agonizing seconds I realized this was not just about betrayal. It was about my future. "I want you to leave," I said finally, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "I need time. I can't think straight with you here." Her face fell as if I had slapped her, disbelief etched across her features. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I am. I need space to figure out what I want, and right now, I don't want you in my life. You need to go." I thought I would feel a sense of satisfaction after finally confronting her, but instead I felt emptiness. As Sarah stormed out of the room, her anger palpable, I knew this was just the beginning of the emotional fallout. I wasn't just losing a wife, I was losing the life I had built with her. Sitting on the couch, the weight of my decision settled over me like a heavy fog. I was left alone with my thoughts, overwhelmed by the pain, betrayal, and uncertainty of what lay ahead. I had been shattered, but as I sat there in silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point in my life, one that would lead to something I couldn't yet comprehend. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I was in a state of shock, oscillating between anger and deep sadness. Sarah didn't try to reach out after our confrontation, which I assumed was her way of processing everything or perhaps lingering shame for what she had done. I spent my days at work, going through the motions, and my evenings were consumed by an overwhelming sense of loss. Friends and family began to notice that something was off, but I brushed off their queries. At that point, I wasn't ready to share the details of my shattered marriage. One evening, as I sat on my couch, the remnants of takeout scattered around me, I decided to take a closer look at the emails I had found. I was still struggling to comprehend how Sarah could throw away our life together for someone she barely knew. The more I read, the more I felt like I was peeling back layers of betrayal. Each email unveiled a layer of deceit, revealing the extent of her emotional connection with Mark, the travel agent. I found myself fixating on the details, how they planned romantic weekend getaways and discussed experiences that were meant to be shared between Sarah and me. I felt my blood boil as I read through the exchanges, the pain of betrayal sinking in deeper. I abruptly closed the laptop in frustration, realizing that I couldn't keep torturing myself with those memories. It was during my downtime at work, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, that I stumbled upon an ad for a travel agency promoting solo first-class trips. The thought sparked something inside me, a flicker of hope. What if I could reclaim my freedom? What if I didn't need Sarah to explore the world? I had always dreamed of travel, and now I could do it on my terms. That night, I sat down and mapped out a list of destinations I had always wanted to visit. Italy, Japan, New Zealand, countries I had dreamt of exploring but had always put on hold for both of us. Suddenly, I felt a rush of excitement. I was no longer going to be a victim of my situation. I was going to take control of my life. I pored over travel guides, researched itineraries, and began planning my first solo trip. I made the decision to go to Italy, a place that had long been on my bucket list. I could picture the rolling hills of Tuscany, the vibrant streets of Florence, and the canals of Venice. I wanted to immerse myself in a culture that felt alive and passionate, everything I felt I was missing in my own life. As I booked my first-class ticket, I felt a thrill of empowerment. This was my escape plan, a chance to reshape my life without Sarah. I couldn't help but smile as I confirmed my travel plans, imagining myself wandering through the streets of Rome, sipping espresso at a cafe, and simply enjoying being alone. Then came the day of my departure. I felt exhilarated as I packed my bags, a sense of freedom washing over me. This was my moment, my opportunity to redefine what happiness looked like without the weight of betrayal hanging over my head. The flight itself was a blur of luxury. I settled into my plush seat, adjusting my headphones, and I could finally breathe. The flight attendants brought me drinks, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of genuine happiness. I was leaving the heartache behind and heading toward something new and exciting. As I landed in Italy, the sun kissed my skin, and I was engulfed by the rich aromas of Italian cuisine wafting through the air. I felt a sense of adventure bubble inside me. I took a deep breath, letting the newness of everything wash over me, and I stepped into a world that was entirely mine. Each day was filled with exploration, visiting historical landmarks, indulging in the delicious food, and striking up conversations with locals. I met fellow travelers and shared stories, laughter, and moments of vulnerability. I felt invigorated by the kindness of strangers, and I began to see the world as a place full of possibilities rather than a landscape riddled with betrayal. Yet, amidst the thrill of my new experiences, I couldn't completely shake the memories of Sarah. There were moments when I would see a couple holding hands or hear a song that reminded me of our shared past. It was a bittersweet reminder of what I had lost, yet I knew I had made the right decision. I was learning to embrace solitude and find joy within myself. As the days turned into weeks, I began to understand that this journey was not just about seeing new places. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. I realized that I had allowed our relationship to define me, and now I was carving out a new identity, one built on self-love, exploration, and the freedom to pursue my own happiness. One evening, as I watched the sun set over the canals of Venice, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I took a moment to reflect. I felt grateful for the pain I had experienced because it led me to this beautiful place, both physically and emotionally. I knew that I would emerge from this stronger and more resilient. My heart ached, but I was slowly learning how to heal. I was no longer just Jake, Sarah's husband. I was Jake, the traveler, the adventurer, and perhaps, just perhaps, the man who would find love again, but this time on my own terms. This journey was only the beginning, and I was ready to see where it would lead me next. As my time in Italy unfolded, I relished the freedom that came with being alone. Each day was an adventure, yet my heart still wrestled with the aftershocks of my marriage's collapse. I embraced the culture, the sights, and the people who crossed my path. I was carving out a new life, yet the memories of Sarah lingered like shadows at the edges of my mind. About a week into my trip, I found myself in Florence, wandering the cobblestone streets, soaking in the art and history that surrounded me. I stumbled upon a small cafe known for its espresso. The moment I walked in, the barista greeted me with a warm smile, and I felt a sense of familiarity that reminded me of my mornings with Sarah. I quickly shook off the thought. This was my time to focus on me, not on our past. One afternoon, as I sat outside the cafe, sipping on a cappuccino, I noticed someone sitting at the table next to me. She was a striking woman with curly dark hair, immersed in a book. I stole glances at her, intrigued by her serenity. After a while, she caught my eye and smiled, a gesture that made my heart skip a beat. "Enjoying the view?" she asked playfully, nodding toward the bustling street. "Definitely," I replied, surprised by my own boldness. "This city is stunning." "First time in Florence?" she inquired, setting her book down and giving me her full attention. "Yeah, just trying to soak it all in. My name's Jake." I introduced myself, feeling a rush of excitement at the unexpected interaction. "Nice to meet you, Jake. I'm Clara. I'm actually here on a solo trip too," she said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. We chatted for what felt like hours, sharing travel stories and experiences. Clara was vibrant, full of life, and it was refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't burdened by the heaviness of my past. As we exchanged stories about our adventures, I felt a connection that surprised me. There was something liberating about meeting someone without the baggage of history. "Want to explore the city together?" Clara proposed, her smile wide and inviting. For the first time since my marriage ended, I felt a flicker of excitement at the prospect of sharing my journey with someone else. "Sure, that sounds great," I replied, a grin spreading across my face. As we wandered through Florence, visiting the iconic Duomo, the Uffizi Gallery, and the Ponte Vecchio, I felt lighter than I had in months. Clara's laughter was infectious, and the joy of companionship warmed me from the inside out. We took pictures together, shared gelato, and talked about our dreams and aspirations. The more time I spent with Clara, the more I realized how much I had missed connecting with another person. It was a refreshing reminder that life continued, and I didn't have to carry the weight of my past alone. Our days were filled with exploration, and I felt a spark of happiness that I hadn't experienced in a long time. But with that happiness came a flash of guilt. I felt like I was betraying the memory of my marriage, as if moving on meant I was erasing the love I once had for Sarah. Deep down, I knew this wasn't true. My journey was about healing, about rediscovering myself and what I deserved. As Clara and I climbed to the viewpoint at Piazzale Michelangelo, the breathtaking view of Florence sprawled out before us, I felt a sense of hope swelling in my chest. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city, and I realized that I was ready to embrace this new chapter of my life. That night, as Clara and I shared a bottle of Chianti at a local restaurant, we talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, and the newfound freedom of being single. I was captivated by her passion for life, her adventurous spirit reflecting my own. "Have you thought about what's next for you?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "I think I'm finally learning how to live for myself," I admitted, my voice steady. "I've spent so long being defined by my relationship that I forgot who I really was. Traveling again has helped me see that life is about experiences, not just settling down." Clara nodded, understanding my struggles without judgment. "It's never too late to redefine what happiness means. You're on a journey of discovery, and that's beautiful." Her words resonated with me, cementing a realization I had been grappling with. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was reclaiming my narrative step by step. As the night wore on, Clara leaned in closer, and I felt a rush of chemistry between us. It had been so long since I had felt a spark of attraction, and the thrill of it was exhilarating. I knew it was too soon, but I was ready to embrace this new connection, to feel alive again. That evening, as we strolled back to our hotels hand in hand, I found myself smiling. I was no longer Jake, the husband who had been cheated on. I was Jake, the traveler who had the potential to fall in love again. It felt surreal, but I knew deep down that this was part of the healing process. The experience with Clara opened my eyes to the possibilities that lay ahead. I realized that my journey was not just about escaping my past, but also about inviting new experiences into my life. I had been reborn through pain, and now I was ready to embrace love, adventure, and the joy of new beginnings. As we said our goodbyes that night, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that I could find happiness, even after heartbreak. Life was full of twists and turns, and I was finally beginning to embrace the ride. After several days of exploring Florence with Clara, my heart felt lighter. I had learned to enjoy the moment, to appreciate my newfound freedom, but the memories of my life before still lingered in the background. Returning to reality after such an exhilarating experience would be a challenge, but the time I spent with Clara was a reminder that there was life, and perhaps love, beyond the pain of my past. As my trip drew to a close, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. I had become accustomed to the joy of solo travel, the thrill of exploring new places, and the comforting connection I had formed with Clara. However, I also knew that returning home meant facing the consequences of my decisions. I had put Sarah behind me, and while I had no intention of going back to that life, I had to confront the reality of what was left. The night before my departure, Clara and I sat on the steps of the Ponte Vecchio, overlooking the water. The city was aglow with lights, and I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet sense of nostalgia wash over me. I had come to Italy seeking solace and clarity, and instead, I had found adventure, connection, and a glimpse of what my life could be like. "Are you to be okay when you get home?" Clara asked, her voice soft and concerned. "I think so," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at me. "I've spent so much time feeling lost, but this trip helped me realize that I'm capable of starting over. I've learned that I can find joy on my own." She smiled, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. "You're stronger than you think. It takes courage to face your past and embrace the future." In that moment, I felt a surge of gratitude for our time together. Clara had helped me rediscover a part of myself I thought I had lost forever. "I'm really glad I met you," I said, sincerity pouring from my heart. "You've made this trip unforgettable." "I feel the same way," she replied, leaning in closer. "Just know that you're not alone in this journey. I'm cheering you on from afar." As we sat together, the weight of the past lifted as I embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. We shared a moment of silence, simply enjoying each other's presence, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a fleeting connection. Something deeper was forming, and for the first time since my world had crumbled, I felt a kind of hope that I hadn't thought possible. The next morning, I boarded my flight back home, the excitement of new experiences still coursing through my veins. I had exchanged contact information with Clara, and we promised to keep in touch, but I knew that returning home would be a different kind of challenge. I was anxious about facing the reality of my life without Sarah and the emotional fallout that was sure to come. As I stepped off the plane, the familiar sights and sounds enveloped me, but everything felt different. I was no longer the same man who had boarded that flight to Italy. I had grown, had learned to appreciate life again, and had discovered a sense of independence I hadn't realized I needed. But with that growth came the reality of having to deal with the remnants of my past. When I walked through the front door of my house, I was greeted by an unsettling silence. The emptiness felt heavy, a stark contrast to the vibrancy I had experienced in Italy. I took a deep breath, trying to ground myself in the moment. I was determined to face whatever lay ahead. A few days passed and I found myself in a routine. I went back to work, reconnected with friends, and attempted to fill my life with activities that brought me joy. Yet the shadow of my past still loomed over me. I knew I had to confront Sarah, to talk about the dissolution of our marriage and what that meant for both of us. I reached out to her, suggesting we meet for coffee. To my surprise, she agreed, and I felt a surge of anxiety mixed with anticipation as the day approached. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would there be anger, tears, or perhaps a truce? I was unsure how we could even begin to unravel the mess that we had created. When we met, I was struck by how different she looked. There was a weariness in her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and regret. As we sat across from each other in a small cafe, I felt the tension simmering in the air. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral despite the tumult of emotions inside me. I thought it was important for us to talk. We began tentatively, discussing the surface-level details of our lives since I returned. It felt strange, like we were two strangers trying to navigate an unfamiliar landscape. But eventually, the conversation shifted to the real reason we were there. "Jake, I'm sorry," she finally said, her voice cracking. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I wish I could take it back. I never wanted to destroy what we had." "And yet you did, Sarah," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "You made a choice, and that choice has irrevocably changed everything. I can't just forget about it." "I know, and I've been reflecting a lot," she continued. "I realize now how much I took us for granted. I was selfish, and I never appreciated how good we had it. I let my insecurities overshadow what was real between us." Her words felt like a double-edged sword. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the wounds were still fresh. I had spent so long trying to heal, and I wasn't sure if I could trust her again. "I've moved on, Sarah," I said, my voice unwavering. "I'm not the same person who walked into that cafe a few months ago, and I don't know if I can go back to what we had." She nodded, the tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, but I hope one day you can. I've been working on myself, trying to figure out why I made those choices." As we talked, I found myself feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. We both knew that this chapter was closed, and as painful as it was time to turn the page. I realized that our relationship had become a memory, a lesson learned, and the future held something different for both of us. "Maybe we can find a way to be friends someday," I suggested, surprising myself. "I would like that," she replied, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was time to fully embrace my new life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. I was ready to move forward, to explore new beginnings, and to navigate the unknown, armed with the lessons of my past, but excited for the possibilities that lay ahead. In the weeks that followed my conversation with Sarah, I felt a profound sense of liberation. I had faced the ghosts of my past, and while the memories still lingered, I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. I found myself diving deeper into my interests and passions, discovering new hobbies that excited me and made me feel alive again. I started taking cooking classes, something I had always wanted to do but had set aside for years. I experimented with new recipes, inviting friends over for dinner parties, and relishing the joy of sharing good food and laughter. Each meal I prepared was more than just a dish. It was a celebration of my newfound independence, a testament to my ability to create joy in my life again. Work, too, became a source of fulfillment rather than a burden. I threw myself into projects that excited me, and my passion for my job reignited. My colleagues noticed the shift in my demeanor. I was more engaged, more willing to take risks, and I even spearheaded a new initiative that improved our team's efficiency. It felt good to reclaim that part of my life as well. Then there was Clara. We kept in touch after my trip, exchanging messages and sharing our experiences. Our connection blossomed into a friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. We often reminisced about the time we spent together in Italy, and Clara encouraged me to continue exploring new places and cultures. One day, I received a message from her that sparked an idea. How about planning a trip together? Just friends exploring a new destination, she suggested. The thought thrilled me. It felt like an exciting adventure waiting to happen. After a few back and forths, we settled on a weekend trip to the coast of California. The thought of reuniting with Clara, exploring the beauty of the Pacific coastline, and experiencing new adventures together was invigorating. As I packed my bags for the trip, I felt a sense of excitement bubbling inside me. This was a new beginning, no longer tinged with the shadows of my past but filled with possibilities. The trip was everything I had hoped for and more. Clara and I laughed, explored, and shared dreams over beach bonfires. We visited quaint seaside towns, hiked along scenic trails, and savored every moment. I felt a genuine connection with her, one that was refreshing and free of the burdens I had carried before. One evening, as we walked along the shore watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Clara turned to me and said, "You've changed, Jake. You seem so much more at peace with yourself." I smiled, touched by her observation. I've learned a lot this past year. Sometimes it takes a major shake-up to realize what truly matters. I've learned the importance of nurturing my own happiness. As we shared that moment, I realized I was ready to embrace whatever came next, whether it was friendship with Clara or perhaps something deeper down the line. I understood that my journey wasn't about rushing into another relationship, but about allowing life to unfold naturally. Returning home from California, I felt renewed and invigorated. I had taken control of my life, and while I had faced heartbreak, I had also discovered resilience and strength within me. I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and an open heart. In the months that followed, I continued to build on the foundation I had created. I focused on my personal growth, surrounded myself with supportive friends, and embraced new experiences. I learned to love myself and prioritize my well-being, understanding that true happiness comes from within. I kept Sarah in my thoughts, but with a sense of understanding rather than bitterness. I recognized that our relationship had taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of communication. I had survived the storm, and now I was standing on solid ground, ready to embrace whatever life had to offer. Looking back on my journey, I realized that betrayal had led me to a profound transformation. It had pushed me to explore the depths of my own heart and soul, ultimately leading me to the realization that I could create my own happiness, independent of anyone else. As I navigated the future, I committed to being open to love again, but this time I would do it on my terms. I was no longer the man who would settle for less than he deserved. I was Jake, a man of resilience, adventure, and hope, a man ready to see where life would lead him next.